Hey everybody, it's Vi. We're checking out Untitled Project number 2094. Got the game page open here. It says this is an early prototype, the point of which is for me to have fun. You will need a controller to play. The game asks you to reconnect your controller. You have to press X or A to continue. I was too lazy to update the reconnect screen. So I don't know anything about this game. I don't even know what... Oh, I actually know nothing about this game, but we're gonna give it a playtest and see if we can give some useful feedback. I did notice real quick, I do have my Xbox 360 controller connected. As you can kind of see, I can kind of, well, I guess you can't tell, but I don't have the game focused right now, but I can still kind of control in the menu here. So you probably want to, you probably want to make sure the game doesn't still receive input when the game's not focused. Go ahead and get rid of that overlay. And we're going to give this a shot now. Another thing I did notice is that there appears to be no dead zone on the left thumbstick. So, like, if I just barely even touch the thumbstick, I can kind of move it down. It's just kind of a false input. You really need to set the dead zone. You know, I'd suggest like 0.4, my opinion, is a good place. 0.3 if you really want it to be responsive, but I wouldn't go any lower than that, but that's usually the number I would aim for. But yeah, this feels kind of like it's gonna, for whatever reason, my thumbstick, I guess, is just being more sensitive in the down direction, so it's like really easy to get this misinput where it kind of moves where I don't want it to. Works a little better with the D-pad, I guess. A button doesn't work for options. I don't know if I can... Looks like the mouse doesn't even show up here. I'm having trouble even getting it up to the start. Okay, looks like A button works on start. Looks like I am on in this blue rectangle here. Again, it doesn't appear to be a dead zone, so you can see I can do like just barely even touching the stick. I can kind of move it around. See the arrow, a little debug arrow there. Thankfully, it doesn't really move the character much, and so it appears to be analog input, and so it's not the most terrible thing, but you might get like a little drift or something. Like, yeah, see, right now I don't have my finger on my left hand is completely off the controller, but I'm drifting slightly because of the lack of the dead zone. So I definitely get that set. Looks like we can attack with the old X button. Okay, so this is where it gets frustrating. So it appears to attack in the direction you're pressing, but because of the propensity for the false inputs, it makes it really easy to, like, the last attack I did there, I just held to the right and then let go of right and press attack, and you saw how it attacked to the left. It's just one of those things that happens when you don't have the dead zone set properly. You just get all these false inputs, directional inputs, so you can get in some frustrating stuff like that. Looks like we can do, I'm gonna guess it's like a stronger attack on the Y. It's like ever so slightly slower, I think. It's not very much though. I think you might want to, if it's supposed to be a slower, stronger attack, you might want to emphasize it a little more, make it more obvious that they're different. There's a number on the left that kind of goes up when you attack. I don't know, it gives me the impression of like a combo meter, but I'm not actually hitting anything. Looks like we can smack this guy, does 10 damage at a time. This is like a dummy, I guess. Oh, the scrolls. Right, so this does 15. And then circle. Oh, that's interesting. So I guess I chopped his head off. There's some kind of an execution going on here. Not really sure how that worked out there. It looks like his health meter is going down really slowly. And there's another meter here. Maybe that's for the execution or something. If I can fill that up, then I can do this. Interesting how it kind of rolls to the front here. I don't really understand why that would be the case. Like, what about this particular position is is important here? It seems kind of weird if that's always the case, if it always goes to this position. because this appears to be sort of an omnidirectional game. So always going to like an absolute position after doing an execution seems like it would be counter to the concept of omnidirectionality, I guess. But yeah, this is interesting. I don't know, are there other buttons? Oh, whoa, what's going on? Yeah, I'm not touching anything. Oh, oh, okay. So the right, the right thumbstick does a dodge in a arbitrary direction. That's interesting. All right, so what happened there a moment ago, where it kept dodging like endlessly into the corner? That was another consequence of the fact that there's no dead zone set, or it's set very low. So I can do this kind of accidentally, just barely touching the right thumbstick here. But yeah, it's interesting. You can just dodge like that. It kind of feels. Oh, okay. Okay, so you can't dodge. You can't cancel your attack animation, but you can hold the stick. If you hold the stick in a direction before it ends, as soon as the animation ends, you can dodge. It seems. So that seems to be the idea that you're probably going to want to do. What happens if I just don't execute him then? Does that go away? Goes away. And presumably if I keep attacking him and the top meter goes to 0, then he'll just die. It just seems to take an extremely long time. Like, I understand, like, the suggestion, or the implication here is that you're meant to go for this kind of early execution rather than killing him outright, but the fact that I'm assuming you can kill him outright. Let's see what happens here. Okay, so nothing seemed to happen. I'm guessing that's what's meant to happen. Maybe it's just not implemented that way. But that's the only thing I can imagine that top meter's for. But well, I'm assuming that's a bug. Okay, I'm like absorbing all these. The number in the top left is going way up. I'm afraid this is gonna like soft lock or something here. I might have to restart the game, but let me just finish my thought here. The fact that you presumably can kill them in the alternative way by not doing the execution, but just wailing on them until they die. I think there kind of needs to be a reason for that to exist. And, you know, if that is an option available to the player for whatever reason that they can kill them that way, it would seem to me that it taking that long to hack away at their life is a bit much. Like, it should probably be quite a bit less, I think. Assuming you still want to go for the more optimal way of killing them, but I don't think it makes sense to have that option if it's just like completely ridiculous to actually kill them that way. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and... What can we do here? Escape key doesn't work. Alright, let's go ahead and Alt F4. I'm going to rerun the game because I'm assuming that's a bad behavior we don't want to happen. Was that the wrong one? Apparently closed the wrong window here. Oh, wait, no, that's why. Because the game wasn't zipped. I usually open up like the zip folder and run the game from there, but this just dropped an exe onto my disk here, so it didn't actually open up a window, so I have to browse to there again. Here we go. Sorry for the delay there. No, the delay. Let's make sure this is hooked in. There it goes. Okay. So again, options doesn't work. Let's go ahead back and start. So yeah, I was kind of thinking about this. So it might make sense to buffer this input so that people don't necessarily have to hold it down. Like if they're in the middle of doing attacks, they don't want to hold it. They just want to if they just want to hit attack like 3 times and then slap the stick. Like it might work, but if they do it a little too early, especially during like these slower attacks, then it might just eat the input. If they just slap the stick really fast and then let it return to neutral. So it might be a good idea to buffer the input. Holding the stick kind of functions as buffering, but doing it sort of automatically for the player in the code might be beneficial. So I don't know if there's anything else for us to see here. I don't know what happens if we engage multiple enemies. Their meters go back down, it looks like. So yeah, it seems to always go to this one position. I'm gonna guess that the thought process behind this was for creating an animation that rather than just make an animation that works from any direction or something, he has them move to here, and then it has some kind of a sprite animation or something of decapitating the guy. But again, the fact that it always moves you to this specific position, I think, would be detrimental to the game potentially. But yeah, not a lot else I can comment on. Looks like you can attack more than one enemy at a time. It looks like there's a little bit of hit lag there, or hit stop, or whatever you want to call it. What happens if we do both of them? Okay, so I think it might have been cool if you can manage to get 2 enemies into this execution state or whatever at the same time, and they're kind of nearby. I think it might be cool if you could just press the button and execute both of them together. Obviously that might require a little more work or something, maybe some additional consideration for visual effects, that kind of thing, but it seems like it would be a really cool idea. But yeah, I think the only other thing I probably want to mention is the idea of the analog input, as opposed to some of the 8 direction style input and stuff. Sometimes it's not necessarily a thing you want. Just some considerations for the base movement. When you have analog input, there's kind of 2 things you want to consider for this kind of 2D movement. One is the direction that you're moving in, where I can instead of just moving in 8 directions, I can kind of move arbitrarily in a direction. But the other thing is how fast you're moving. You can move slowly, like this. If your game doesn't really have a purpose for moving slowly like this, in my opinion, it's not necessarily good to even have that option. And that's something you can tweak the movement code to kind of get rid of, so it's always just kind of the same direction. I mean, the same velocity here. And one of the things that can do is it kind of gets rid of this. I guess in this case it's very small, but you get this. It's almost like an inertial effect, where it's kind of your real world. the real world inertia of your thumb, where the time it takes to move it from one direction to the next, it doesn't really kind of snap to the full speed immediately. So you move it really fast. In this case, it's not very noticeable, but sometimes you don't really want that. Just to make the game as responsive as possible to changes in directions. The other thing is, sometimes some games just work better with 8 directions just because it's less. In this case, it might not be the case. In some games, it doesn't matter. So that's just something to mention. But I also want to mention, especially with the dodge, this is something I would consider probably would be more something I would kind of carefully consider the idea that you can do this in any arbitrary direction versus a direction. Like just walking around, I don't think it matters too much, but when it comes to dodging, sometimes it can be a lot better to have limited number of directions to choose from. And kind of the reason for that is something like this, you want to kind of use it as optimally as possible. And in order to do that, it really needs to be predictable. So like if you want to go in a very specific direction, you kind of try to do it with your thumb, but it might not quite be exactly the direction that you intended. And it's really quite easy to not get it like exactly right with a thumbstick like that. And if you change that to an 8 direction input, it kind of removes that whole element. So you pretty much know if you did it diagonally or if you did it down or to the right. And knowing that, you can kind of, while you're playing, you kind of always know what's going to happen when you slap that direction with the thumbstick. It's never going to be like a few degrees one way or the other from what you expected. It's always going to be like exactly diagonal or exactly right or down. And that sort of thing can, be the difference between life and death in this sort of game when you're doing like a dodge maneuver and whatever. So that would be something I would definitely suggest looking into. But yeah, apart from that, I don't think there's much else I can talk about here so far. It seems like there's like a cool idea being cooked up here, where you get to wail on guys and then do this execute thing. Really interested to see where you go with that. I mean, there's so many options that you could consider. It does take a little time for the execute animation. This is kind of getting ahead of myself, I think, but I mean, in terms of what's actually in the game right now, but you could kind of imagine that maybe you might want that to go a little faster so you can get back into the action sooner if there's other enemies around you. But yeah, I think it'd be cool to have a game with a lot of focus on mobilities and the roll and stuff to maneuver around. There's kind of a pretty good amount of lag between everything you do. It's pretty significant. I mean, the roll isn't very fast. The attacks aren't that fast. You could definitely consider tweaking them to be faster. Make the game a little more responsive and intense. That could feel a lot better, but that depends, I guess, on people's tastes to some extent. But I like the idea of being able to dodge between different enemies and wail on them, and then pull off these executions and just kind of seamlessly go back into whatever you're doing. And it's a lot of ideas that could be brought out of this, but I guess I just have to wait and see what the developer has intended here to comment on that any further. But hopefully the video is useful for you. Hopefully I didn't miss anything important. But let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next video.